Lesson number 4, building your roof and closing the structure of your DIY sauna. In my previous lesson, I explained how the height of your walls have an impact on the slope of your roof, and how different types of roofs require different slopes. In this lesson, I want to push it even further, and I want to discuss all the details that will ensure that your roof is leak-proof. Let's start with the basics of your roof framing. In this case, we're going to use 2x6 lumber instead of 2x4s, and that's because your roof is going to have vertical loads, whether it be snow or someone walking on the roof. You want to set your rafters on your front and back wall, and you want to separate them 16 on center, or every 16 inches. Now, another important step is the bird mouth cut. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this, it's when you cut out the area that is sitting on your wall. And that's extremely important because if you don't do this, all of the weight of the roof will be sitting on this very precise point on your rafters, and that could lead to failure of the roof. Another good practice is to have overhangs on your roof. This will prevent rain from coming into the building, and it will also allow you to add ventilation in the front and back of your roof. The advantage of having ventilation in your overhangs and having a proper slope in your roof is that you'll create a natural airflow under your roof. And this is done by having the hot air from inside of the sauna expand into the roof, and naturally the cold air will be sucked in from the back vent and exit through the front vent. And this is critical to remove any moisture buildup under your roof. Most of you are going to buy your metal roof at a big box store like Home Depot or Lowe's, which means you'll probably end up with a thinner metal, and that's why it'll be super important to add 1/2-inch plywood underneath your metal panels. And here's something to remember or to note: it's super important to use plywood and not OSB. And the reason for that is because when you add your screws for the metal roof, it doesn't have as much biting power, and with time the screws will become loose, which means that you'll have a leak in your roof. And while we're on the topic of screws for your roof, this is a big controversy, which is, do you screw on the flat area of your roof panel or on the rib? Now, based on my research, most manufacturers recommend that you do it on the flat portion. The screws are designed to be leak-proof. There's a rubber O-ring, but a lot of the old school roofers will say that you should do it on top of the rib. Now, based on the information that I've read, the disadvantage of doing that is you can squish the rib, and also with heat expansion in the roof, the screw might become loose and you might ultimately have a leak in your roof. But I am not a professional roofer. I am going to leave that decision to you, and you can do your own research. But I personally would choose the flat portion. Here's another tip. When you're installing your flashing, you want to think like a raindrop. Water flows from top to bottom. It follows gravity. So when you're installing your flashing, you want to start with the bottom flashing and overlap all the other pieces so that the water can flow on top of the flashing and not under the flashing. The next step to close off your building is to add your OSB sheathing. This is typically 1/2-inch OSB screwed on your 2x4 studs. Then you want to add your weather barrier, which is a paper wrap that is waterproof on one side and breathable on the other. And this allows any type of moisture on your wall to evaporate. The final step is to add the siding of your choice. And depending on the type of siding that you're adding, you might need a 1-inch air gap behind the siding. And you can do that by adding furring strips on the OSB. And that concludes lesson 4 on how to build your own DIY sauna.